The night was quiet in Los Angeles, but inside Keanu Reeves's heart there was a storm. He had spent years giving his time to work, to fans, to strangers who needed kindness. Yet when he returned home, silence always waited for him. The world saw him as strong, mysterious, untouchable, but in truth, Keanu was a man who longed for something very human: companionship. He sat alone in his living room, the city lights glowing through the wide glass windows. He thought about his life, the movies, the applause, the laughter of strangers who loved his work. But when the lights faded and the curtains closed, he faced the emptiness of his own shadow. "I want a wife," he whispered to himself one evening, not for the glamour, not for the world's approval, but for the quiet moments no one saw. Someone to share tea with on rainy days, someone to listen when his voice trembled, someone to remind him he was not just an actor, but a man who needed to be loved. Little did he know, someone had been holding back the same truth for years. Across the city, Sandra Bullock sat on her porch with a cup of coffee. Her laughter was known across the world, her strength admired, but her heart carried a secret it had kept for too long. She remembered the moments she had shared with Keanu on set years ago. She remembered how his kindness was never for the cameras, how his silence held more care than 1,000 loud promises. But Sandra had never spoken her truth. Fear of breaking the friendship, fear of being misunderstood, fear that her heart would not be enough for him. All of these fears kept her silent. Yet that night, as the cool wind touched her skin, she whispered words she had never dared to say aloud. "Keanu, you were always the one." Fate was preparing to bring their silent hearts together. A week later, Keanu was invited to a private charity dinner. He almost refused, tired of the same small talk and cameras, but something inside him told him to go. When he arrived, dressed simply in black, his eyes scanned the room and froze. Sandra Bullock was standing near the window, her smile soft but her eyes distant, as if lost in her own thoughts. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the noise of the room disappeared. It was as if time itself paused, reminding them both of a bond they had once shared but never explored. "Sandra," Keanu said quietly as he walked closer. "Keanu," she replied, her voice catching just slightly. They both laughed nervously, remembering how many years had passed, and how the world always whispered about them but never knew the truth. They sat together at a corner table. Keanu noticed she avoided the bright lights, preferring the quiet shadows. Sandra noticed he listened more than he spoke, just as he always had. But behind their gentle smiles, both hearts were beating faster, carrying unspoken words. At one point, Keanu finally asked, "Do you ever feel that something is missing?" Sandra looked at him, her eyes soft but heavy. "Every day," she admitted. "We give so much of ourselves to others, but when the night comes, we return to silence." Their words echoed each other's secret pain. For the first time in years, they were no longer hiding behind laughter or work. They were just two souls admitting that they were lonely, that they longed for something deeper. And then, a moment of suspense fell over them. Sandra hesitated, then placed her hand gently on the table close to his. "Keanu," she whispered, her voice trembling, "there is something I never told you. Something I should have said long ago." Keanu's breath caught. The noise of the room faded again. He leaned closer, his voice low. "What is it, Sandra?" Her eyes glistened, her lips trembling as if the words were fighting their way out of her heart. "I always wanted to be more than just your friend," she confessed, her voice breaking. "But I was afraid." Keanu froze, his heart pounding. In that single confession, years of silence shattered. The room around them seemed to vanish after Sandra's confession. Laughter, clinking glasses, the low music, all of it became a distant blur. Keanu sat in silence, his chest tightening, as if her words had unlocked something he had buried for years. "You wanted more?" he asked softly, almost as if he didn't trust his own voice. Sandra nodded, her eyes lowering for a moment before meeting his again. "I wanted more, but I thought, maybe you didn't. I didn't want to ruin what we had." Keanu leaned back, his mind racing. He remembered their time together on movie sets. The way she laughed at his quiet jokes, the way her presence always made the long hours feel lighter. He had admired her strength, her spirit, and yet, like her, he had kept his feelings hidden. "I was afraid too," he admitted finally, his voice rough. "I thought if I told you what I felt, I might lose you." Sandra's eyes widened slightly, her lips parting in surprise. "You felt it too?" Keanu nodded slowly. "From the beginning." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. But it was not the silence of strangers. It was the silence of two hearts realizing they had carried the same secret all along. But just as the air grew heavy with possibility, reality returned. A reporter with a camera spotted them and moved closer, whispering into his phone. Paparazzi were never far away. Sandra noticed first. She pulled her hand back from the table quickly, her smile tightening into something polite. "They're watching," she whispered. Keanu's jaw clenched. Fame had always been a wall between him and the simple moments he longed for. Now, even in this fragile truth, the world was trying to intrude. "Then let's leave," he said firmly. Sandra hesitated but nodded. Together they slipped out through a side door into the cool night air. The city lights sparkled and the hum of traffic filled the silence between them as they walked down the quiet street. Finally, Sandra spoke, her voice low. "What now, Keanu? We said what we feel, but can we really live it? The world will turn this into headlines by morning. They'll twist every word, every picture." Keanu stopped walking and turned to face her. "I don't care about the world. I care about you. If there's even a chance that what we feel is real, then we can't let fear stop us." His words hit her deeply, but her eyes filled with conflict. "You make it sound simple, but it isn't. I've seen how love gets crushed under the weight of cameras, rumors, and expectations. I don't want to lose you to all of that." Keanu stepped closer, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Then don't lose me. Not to fear, not to headlines. Let's write our own story, not let them write it for us." Sandra's eyes glistened. She wanted to believe him, but she had carried her fear for so long. Suddenly, a car pulled up near the curb and flashes of light exploded. Paparazzi had found them. Voices shouted their names. Questions flew into the night air and the fragile intimacy of their moment shattered. Keanu immediately reached for her hand, pulling her gently but firmly. "Come on." They ran down the street, laughter and adrenaline mixing with tension. For the first time that night, Sandra felt something new. Freedom. As if his hand guiding hers could shield her from the chaos. When they finally stopped, breathless in front of a small closed bookstore, Sandra leaned against the wall, her heart pounding. Keanu stood close, his face only inches from hers. "This is crazy," she whispered. "Maybe," he replied softly, "but sometimes the best things in life are born from crazy." Their eyes locked, and for the first time in years there was no fear, no curtain of silence. Just truth, raw and trembling between them. The night after their escape from the cameras, Keanu lay awake staring at the ceiling. The memory of Sandra's trembling words played again and again in his mind. "I always wanted to be more than just your friend." Those words were like a spark lighting a fire he had kept buried for too long. But with the spark came fear. He knew the world would not let them breathe in peace. Every smile, every glance would be magnified, every silence twisted. Fame was a heavy curtain and love often suffocated beneath it. Still, he could not deny the truth any longer. He wanted her. Not as a friend, not as a memory, but as the partner his heart had searched for. The next morning, he sent her a message. "Meet me somewhere no cameras can follow." Sandra replied with a simple, "Yes." That evening, they met at a quiet lake outside the city. The water shimmered under the fading sun and the air was calm, untouched by noise. Sandra arrived in a simple coat, her hair loose, her eyes searching. Keanu stood waiting at the edge of the dock, his hands in his pockets. When she walked toward him, time slowed again. "You found a place without cameras," she said softly, almost with relief. "I had to," he answered. "I wanted this moment to belong only to us." For a while they said nothing, just listening to the gentle sound of the water. Then Sandra turned to him, her voice carrying the weight of years. "Keanu, if we do this, we can't go halfway. It can't just be stolen moments by the lake. It has to be real, and real comes with risk." He nodded. "I know. I'm ready for the risk. The question is, are you?" Sandra's eyes shimmered with conflict. "My heart says yes, but my mind..." She trailed off, shaking her head. "I have seen how fragile love can be. I don't want to lose you if the world destroys us." Keanu stepped closer, his voice steady. "Then let's promise each other this. Whatever the world says, whatever storms come, we hold on. Even when it's hard. Even when we're scared, we hold on." Her lips trembled, but she nodded slowly. "We hold on." Their hands found each other, fingers locking tightly. But just as peace began to settle, the first twist revealed itself. Sandra's phone buzzed in her pocket. She frowned, pulling it out, and her face turned pale. "What is it?" Keanu asked, concern in his voice. She handed him the screen. It was a headline spreading online with photos from the night before. Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock, secret romance exposed? Dozens of pictures showed them leaving the charity dinner, running from cameras and standing too close in the street. Sandra's chest tightened. "It's already started," she whispered. Keanu read the article silently, his jaw tight. Then he looked at her with calm determination. "We knew this would happen. The question isn't whether they'll talk. It's whether we'll let them decide our story." Sandra's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to be another headline, Keanu. I don't want my heart to be a story for the world to consume." He reached out, cupping her face gently. "Then let them talk. Let them write what they want. We'll write our own truth." Her breath caught, and for the first time in years she leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. But before their lips could meet, another sound broke the fragile stillness, the click of a camera. They turned sharply. Across the water, a shadowy figure stood, snapping pictures with a long lens. Sandra's heart dropped. "They found us here too." Keanu pulled her close, his eyes narrowing. "Then we fight. Together." The photos spread faster than either of them expected. By morning, every major site carried the same headline: Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. Secret love revealed. Television shows played the grainy images again and again, their voices speculating about the truth behind the smiles, the closeness, the night they tried to hide. Sandra sat in her kitchen, her coffee untouched, staring at the screen. Her phone buzzed endlessly with calls from her manager, from friends, from reporters demanding answers. The walls felt like they were closing in. She whispered to herself, "This is exactly what I was afraid of." Meanwhile, Keanu sat across the city in his own apartment, the bracelet Anna had once given him still resting on the shelf from another chapter of his life, reminding him of promises and courage. He looked at the flashing headlines but felt no shame, no fear, only determination. He called Sandra. When she answered, her voice was shaky. "Keanu, I don't know if I can handle this. I wanted us to be real, but I didn't want to be. This spectacle." His voice was steady, calm. "Then let's not let them control the story. We control it. We decide who we are, not the headlines." Her silence stretched for a long moment before she whispered, "But what if it destroys everything? My career, yours, the little piece we have left?" Keanu's tone softened. "Sandra, we spent years hiding how we feel because we were afraid of what might happen. And what did it give us? Silence, loneliness, nights staring at ceilings. Do you really want to go back to that?" Her eyes filled with tears as she listened. She wanted to believe him. Her heart screamed yes, but her fear screamed louder. Later that day, they met in person at his home, away from the eyes of cameras. Sandra paced the room, her hands trembling. "This isn't just about us anymore. It's about the world, about how they will twist every moment we share." Keanu stood still, watching her with quiet intensity. "Then let them twist it. The truth is still ours. If we're strong enough, nothing they say will matter." Sandra turned to him, her voice breaking. "But I'm not as strong as you. I don't know if I can stand against all of this." His expression softened. He walked closer, his voice low but filled with emotion. "Then let me be strong for both of us until you can be. We'll stand together. If you fall, I'll catch you. If you doubt, I'll remind you. If you're afraid, I'll hold you." Her lips trembled, and for a moment she believed him. But just then the doorbell rang. Keanu opened it, and standing there was his publicist, holding a folder with articles and contracts. "You need to deny it," she said sharply. "Both of you. If you don't, your reputations will take a hit. People love you as icons, not as a couple." Sandra's chest tightened at those words. Deny it, pretend it wasn't real. Erase what her heart had finally spoken aloud. Keanu looked at her, then back at the publicist. "No," he said firmly. "I won't deny it. I won't lie about what I feel." The publicist's eyes widened. "Keanu, think carefully. This could cost you everything." But he shook his head. "If telling the truth cost me everything, then maybe everything was never mine to begin with." Sandra stared at him, her heart racing. His courage was like a flame, steady in the storm. Later, as they sat together on the couch, Sandra whispered, "Why is it so easy for you to be brave?" He turned to her, his eyes soft. "It isn't easy. I'm terrified. But I'd rather fight for love than live in silence one more day." Sandra leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. For the first time since the headlines broke, she felt a small piece of peace return. Yet outside their quiet moment, the storm was still raging, and they both knew the hardest test had yet to come. The storm outside grew louder, Newspapers, television shows, and endless social media posts debated their every move. Some people cheered for them, calling their connection beautiful and overdue. Others criticized, turning their love into gossip, dissecting every smile and every silence. Sandra sat by the window of her home, the curtains closed, her phone buzzing nonstop. She had stopped answering calls, stopped reading comments, stopped looking at her own reflection in the mirror. Every time she tried, she heard the voices of strangers judging her. "I can't breathe in this," she whispered to herself. When Keanu came to see her that evening, he found her curled on the couch, her eyes red from tears. He sat beside her, silent at first, letting the weight of the moment settle between them. Finally, she looked at him, her voice cracking. "Keanu, maybe we made a mistake. Maybe we should just let it go before it destroys us both." His chest tightened at her words, but he didn't speak immediately. Instead, he took her trembling hand and held it firmly. "Sandra, I know it's hard. I know the noise feels louder than our hearts. But look at me." She turned, her eyes heavy with doubt. "Do you regret what you told me that night?" he asked. "Do you regret saying you wanted more than friendship?" She shook her head slowly. "No. I've wanted to say it for years." "Then don't let fear steal it away now," he said gently. "We've already lost enough time hiding from the truth. If we walk away now, we'll lose everything that really matters." Her lips trembled. "But what if love isn't enough against the world?" Keanu leaned closer, his voice steady but filled with fire. "Then we make it enough. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it." Her tears spilled over, but she leaned into him, letting his words steady her. For the first time in days, she felt her heart beating with something stronger than fear: hope. But the test came sooner than they expected. The very next morning, Sandra received a call from a film producer. "We need you to release a statement denying the rumors," he said firmly. "If you don't, your next project could collapse. Investors are nervous. They don't want distractions." Sandra froze. Her career had taken years to build, and now it felt like it could shatter with a single choice. She told Keanu about the call later that day, her voice shaking. "They're threatening to pull the project if I don't deny us. If I say we're just friends, I can protect everything I've worked for." Keanu's jaw tightened, but his eyes softened. "And if you do, what happens to your heart?" Her silence was heavy. "Sandra," he continued, "I can't make this choice for you. I can only tell you mine. I'd rather lose every project, every dollar, every headline than lose you, because none of that matters compared to one honest moment with you." Her breath caught, and in his words, she heard the truth her heart had been aching for. That night, as they sat on her porch under the quiet stars, she whispered, "I'm scared, Keanu, but I don't want to lie. Not about this. Not about us." He reached for her hand, holding it tightly. "Then we won't." The decision was made. No denial, no retreat. They would face the storm head-on together. The following day, they appeared side by side at a charity event, not hiding, not pretending. The cameras exploded with flashes. Voices shouted questions. Chaos swirled around them. But when Sandra looked at Keanu, and he smiled softly at her, the noise seemed to fade. They had chosen truth, and for the first time they felt free. The flashes of the cameras that night became the spark of a wildfire. By morning, the world was split in two. Some people celebrated, writing messages like "true love always finds a way and they deserve happiness after all these years." But others poured out harsh words, questioning their motives, twisting their every move into gossip. Sandra sat with Keanu in his quiet home, both of them reading the waves of headlines. She felt the weight of the world pressing on her chest, yet beside her Keanu was calm, his hand resting gently over hers. "How are you not shaken by this?" she whispered, her voice heavy with exhaustion. He turned to her, his eyes steady. "Because for once in my life, I'm not living for them. I'm living for us." Her throat tightened and tears welled in her eyes. "I've lived so much of my life hiding behind smiles, behind roles, behind what people wanted me to be. But with you, I don't have to hide anymore." Keanu's lips curved into the faintest smile. That's what love should be. Not a prison, but freedom. Days turned into weeks, and slowly the noise began to change. The world had watched them walk through the storm, but what caught everyone off guard was the way they carried themselves, with humility, respect, and quiet resilience. Instead of feeding rumors, they supported charities together, stood by each other in silence, and showed kindness even to those who doubted them. Sandra received another call from the producer who once demanded she deny their love. His voice was different this time. People aren't turning away from you, he admitted. They're inspired by you. Maybe honesty was the better story all along. Sandra hung up, her eyes wide, then turned to Keanu. Can you believe that? They thought the truth would destroy me, but it's the truth that saved me. Keanu nodded. Because the truth always outlives lies. But the true twist came one evening at a charity gala. After the speeches and the applause, Keanu took the microphone unexpectedly. The room fell silent, the cameras turning toward him. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of years. I spent much of my life believing love wasn't meant for me. I thought my role was to give kindness to strangers, to walk alone when the lights went off. But then, someone who had been beside me all along spoke from her heart, and her words reminded me that love doesn't knock loudly. It waits quietly until you're brave enough to open the door. The audience was silent, holding its breath. Sandra's eyes glistened, her chest rising and falling quickly. Then Keanu turned toward her, holding out his hand. Sandra, will you walk with me, not as my friend, but as my partner for the rest of this life? Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sandra's lips trembled, tears spilling down her cheeks. She rose slowly, walked to him, and whispered into the microphone, her voice breaking but clear. Yes, Keanu. Always yes. The room erupted in applause, but for them, the world disappeared. In that moment, it was just two hearts finally free of silence, finally speaking the truth they had carried for years. The headlines the next morning were different, no longer just rumors, no longer just speculation. They read, Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock, love that chose truth over fear. And across the world, countless people who had once been afraid to follow their hearts found courage in their story.